Liquidity. It's the invisible force that holds the financial world together. Unseen, untouchable, yet capable of shaking every market on Earth. For decades, this flow of global capital has been controlled through a web of central banks, cross-border settlement systems, and clearinghouses that quietly decide where money goes and when. But what if that system has already changed? And no one told us? Behind closed doors, institutions like the IMF, BIS, and World Bank have spent years studying something they rarely mention in public: distributed ledger technology. The same technology that powers XRP. Officially, these are just research projects. But deep in technical documents, pilot reports, and testimony, you find clues, proof that a shadow network of digital settlement already exists. A network capable of transferring trillions across borders in seconds, using cryptographic bridges that mirror Ripple's design. And when the Federal Reserve cuts rates and opens the liquidity floodgates, into stocks, bonds, or into a new ledger the public isn't supposed to see yet. The truth is simple, but hidden. The real liquidity no longer flows through SWIFT or correspondent banks. It is migrating to tokenized systems built by the same elite institutions who claim to study crypto while quietly engineering its integration. Look closer and you'll find the same fingerprints everywhere. The BIS Innovation Hub, the IMF's cross-border settlement trials, the World Bank's tokenized bond experiments, and even the European Central Bank's prototype ledgers all share one phrase: interoperable digital liquidity. Sound familiar? That's RippleNet's language. That's XRP's domain. And if the IMF's special drawing rights, the global reserve basket, ever become tokenized, there's only one type of asset capable of bridging every currency in real time, under compliance at institutional scale. That's the neutral bridge asset. That's XRP. In this deep dive, we'll uncover how the global financial elite have been preparing for this shift for years. How the IMF and BIS have quietly tested ledgers with real settlement functionality. How Ripple's partnerships align perfectly with IMF and central bank corridors. How tokenized liquidity is being layered beneath the current system, invisible but ready. And why every rate cut, every liquidity injection, every crisis seems to push us closer to revealing what they call the new monetary architecture. Because liquidity doesn't disappear, it moves. And sometimes it moves into the shadows. Welcome to the Hidden Liquidity, XRP and the IMF Secret Ledger. The story they're not ready for you to see. Part 1, the birth of the shadow ledger. It began quietly. Not on television, not in crypto Twitter threads, but in the boardrooms of Basel and Washington, D.C. In 2017, the Bank for International Settlements, BIS, issued a paper that most dismissed as theoretical. It mentioned interoperable digital ledgers for cross-border liquidity settlement between central banks. At the time, it sounded like a concept from a futurist conference. But for those who read between the lines, it was a blueprint. Meanwhile, in London, Ripple Labs was meeting with central bankers from the Bank of England and the IMF's FinTech Advisory Panel. Their agenda? A prototype for instant liquidity using digital bridge assets to replace Nostro and Vostro accounts, the very plumbing of the global banking system. That was the moment the world's two financial timelines quietly intersected, the official ledger and the new one being built beneath it. The IMF had long ruled the global liquidity pool through its special drawing rights, the SDR basket of currencies backing international rescue packages. But by 2018, a new idea was emerging inside their working groups, a digital SDR. The concept was simple yet world-changing. A tokenized unit of account that could move instantly between nations without the friction of SWIFT or correspondent banks. What the public never knew is that the IMF's own fintech department consulted with blockchain firms on the prototype, and Ripple was on that shortlist. It wasn't about creating a new crypto token. It was about replicating the functionality of XRP inside a sovereign ledger, a mirror system that could exist within their regulatory framework. At the same time, the BIS Innovation Hub in Switzerland began running Project Helvetia, an experiment linking digital central bank money to tokenized assets on a private ledger. Publicly, they called it a CBDC trial. Privately, it was a stress test for interoperable liquidity, how multiple ledgers could settle a single transaction across borders in seconds. That's the moment the term shadow ledger was born. Every pilot since then, from Project Dunbar in Singapore to Project Mariana in Europe, traces back to that original design. Multiple jurisdictions, multiple currencies, one shared ledger for liquidity. Exactly the architecture Ripple had spent a decade building. By 2020, the world had a crisis big enough to justify change. The pandemic shattered supply chains, devalued currencies, and forced the Fed to print trillions. But to move that money fast globally, the system needed a faster bridge. The old rails were too slow. The new ledger was ready. That year, the IMF issued statements about digital liquidity solutions. No one paid attention. The news cycle was filled with lockdowns and stimulus checks. But deep in policy papers, the language shifted from central bank reserves to tokenized liquidity mechanisms. Something had changed in the monetary matrix. The public system still showed cash balances and reserves, but beneath that surface and in the ledger, only a few see, transactions were settling on digital rails that didn't exist a few years before. By 2022, Ripple had working corridors with central banks in Bhutan, Palau, and the Middle East. And those weren't just retail CBDC tests, they were liquidity bridges. Exactly what the IMF's digital SDR concept required. So why hasn't the IMF announced its ledger? Because it already exists, in pilot form, operated between trusted institutions behind closed networks. The BIS calls it interlinked liquidity nodes. The IMF calls it cross-jurisdictional CBDC coordination. Ripple calls it on-demand liquidity. Different names, same mechanism. Every experiment brings them closer to merging those two worlds, the official ledger and the shadow one. And once they do, every currency on Earth will be able to move through a single neutral bridge. The bridge already exists. It's just hidden in plain sight. Part 2. The BIS network and the blueprint for control. In the heart of Basel, Switzerland, behind heavy concrete walls and guarded archives, sits the Bank for International Settlements, the so-called central bank of central banks. For most of the last century, the BIS acted as a quiet mediator between nations, a place where currencies and debt could be balanced out of public view. But in the digital era, its purpose evolved. What once managed gold and paper now manages data and liquidity. In 2019, the BIS launched something called the Innovation Hub, a sterile name for what has become the nerve center of global digital finance. Officially, it's a collaboration space for financial technology innovation. Unofficially, it's the laboratory for a new financial order. Project Helvetia, Project Jura,
Project Icebreaker,
Project Mariana, each one a small piece of the same puzzle, an interoperable network of tokenized liquidity. And beneath the jargon lies a blueprint, not just for efficiency but for control. Take Project Jura, for example. In partnership with the Banque de France and the Swiss National Bank, it tested cross-border settlement using tokenized central bank money and digital securities. The conclusion was clear: instant settlement, near zero friction, and full traceability. In their report, one line stood out. This architecture could support multiple digital asset networks under unified oversight. Unified oversight, the phrase everyone missed. Because in the BIS design, liquidity doesn't just move freely. It moves under permission. Each transaction can be approved, reversed, or restricted by policy. Each node of liquidity tied to identifiers. Each bridge, controlled by the very institutions that claim decentralization, is too risky. This is where the parallels to XRP become impossible to ignore. Ripple's network was built for compliance-first liquidity, complete with KYC, AML, and institution-to-institution corridors. The BIS system is building the same thing, but for sovereigns, not startups. They call it tokenized reserves. Ripple calls it on-demand liquidity, and while the crypto community debates price targets, the real game is being played here, where the BIS, IMF, and central banks engineer their own private version of blockchain rails, patterned after the one network that already works. Behind the scenes, Ripple's technology appears in central bank white papers, IMF fintech roundtables, and BIS conferences on interoperability. It's not a coincidence. It's a quiet alignment, because Ripple solved the hardest problem, moving value across ledgers in real time, without rebuilding the entire banking system. The BIS wants that architecture, but with one crucial difference: visibility and control over every movement of capital. In other words, a permissioned internet of value. Think of it like two worlds colliding, one born from open innovation, the other from institutional necessity. both headed for the same destination, a unified liquidity network connecting everything: banks, CBDCs, stablecoins, and tokenized assets. The BIS doesn't want to kill crypto, it wants to absorb it. When the next financial crisis hits, when liquidity dries up and settlements freeze, this network will quietly switch on, bridging reserves, clearing trades, and rebalancing debt across digital ledgers in seconds. To the public, it'll look like magic. To insiders, it'll look like the plan. Every BIS pilot adds another node to the hidden web. Each successful test becomes another step toward replacing the old correspondent system with programmable liquidity. Liquidity that can be turned on, redirected, or frozen at will. And the irony? They built it all using the same principles Ripple pioneered. It's no longer about banks versus crypto. It is about which version of the ledger will run the world, the open one or the closed one. The BIS calls it modernization. History may remember it as the blueprint for control. Part 3. The IMF connection, digital SDRs, and the bridge asset. For more than half a century, the International Monetary Fund has been the silent engine of global liquidity. When nations go broke, it's the IMF that writes the check, not in dollars or euros, but in a unique synthetic currency known as special drawing rights, or SDRs. Created in 1969, SDRs were designed to stabilize the post-gold standard world, a basket of 5 major currencies representing the balance of global power: the dollar, the euro, the pound, the yen, and the yuan. But the SDR system has always had one problem: it's slow. Transactions take days, settlements take weeks, and in a crisis, time is liquidity. That's why behind closed doors, the IMF began to experiment with something new: the digital SDR. Officially, it's a modernization initiative. Unofficially, it's a prototype for a global liquidity token. The concept is simple but radical. Each member nation could hold and transfer digital SDRs instantly on a secure distributed ledger, bypassing SWIFT entirely. That ledger would need to be neutral, interoperable, and compliant, capable of connecting every central bank system on Earth. Sound familiar? It is the exact blueprint Ripple proposed years ago with XRP as a neutral bridge asset between currencies. In 2018, Ripple executives were invited to IMF fintech panels discussing digital liquidity corridors. Christine Lagarde, then IMF managing director, praised blockchain's potential to transform cross-border value exchange. Around the same time, IMF documents began referencing DLT-based settlement solutions for multilateral institutions. Buried in one working paper was a phrase few noticed: future SDR mechanisms may rely on digital bridge assets to facilitate instantaneous value transfer across jurisdictions. A digital bridge asset, the exact term Ripple had popularized. That's when speculation began. Could XRP or its technology become the invisible rail behind the IMF's digital SDR? Here is what we know. The IMF's digital currency initiative relies on interoperability with existing payment networks. RippleNet is one of the few that fits the model. Multiple IMF-linked central banks, including the Bank of England, the Bank of France, and the Saudi Monetary Authority, have tested XRP or RippleNet corridors. Ripple has direct relationships with the World Bank's Better Than Cash Alliance and the UNDP, both IMF-aligned organizations focused on digital finance inclusion. In other words, the network is already there. The IMF doesn't need to build a global liquidity system from scratch. It only needs to connect the pieces. The digital SDR would operate as the unit of account, representing global reserve value. XRP could operate as the settlement layer, bridging currencies instantly through liquidity pools regulated under IMF oversight. In practical terms, when a country requests an IMF disbursement, the funds wouldn't move through the legacy banking chain. They'd be minted as digital SDRs, transferred on a shared ledger, converted into local currency through a neutral bridge asset, and settled in seconds. The world would see only the balance sheets. The real transfer, the movement of value, would occur on the hidden ledger. This isn't science fiction. In 2022, the IMF ES Working Group on Cross-Border Payments released a white paper describing a multi-currency digital settlement network capable of interfacing with both CBDCs and private payment tokens. That's RippleNet, that's XRP. And while no official announcement has been made, the pieces fit too perfectly to ignore. Every central bank pilot, every liquidity corridor, every digital asset bridge project across the BIS, IMF, And World Bank ecosystem leads back to the same architecture, tokenized liquidity moving through neutral settlement rails. That's the world's digital SDR system, already tested, already connected, just waiting for activation. When the next crisis hits, don't expect the IMF to move paper, expect it to move tokens. And when that day comes, one question will define the new era of money. What asset bridges the global reserve system? It may already be hiding in plain sight. Part 4. Tokenized liquidity and the global reset. Liquidity. It's the bloodstream of the global economy. And in 2025, that bloodstream is being rewritten, line by line, code by code, into something programmable. They call it tokenization. But it's not just about turning stocks or real estate into digital tokens. It's about transforming the way value itself moves through the system. Right now, the world's $100 trillion in assets, bonds, equities, commodities, currencies, all move through outdated plumbing, clearinghouses, custodians, and intermediaries. Every transfer takes time, trust, and fees. Tokenization removes that friction. Assets move instantly, 24/7 peer-to-peer across ledgers. But instant settlement requires instant liquidity, and that's where the shadow ledger comes in. Because no matter how many assets are tokenized, they still need a bridge, something that can hold value across jurisdictions, convert between systems, and provide settlement in real time. That's XRP's domain. Behind the scenes, the world's largest financial institutions are preparing for this reset. BlackRock, JP Morgan, and Citi are launching tokenization platforms. The BIS and IMF are building the rails that will connect them. And Ripple, it's been aligning with both. In a BIS roundtable from early 2025, the phrase multi-asset interoperable liquidity pools appeared again. The same language used by Ripple when describing on-demand liquidity corridors. In another, a BIS researcher explained how tokenized assets could utilize a universal settlement bridge to reconcile value between ledgers. A universal settlement bridge. The same function XRP was designed for. Here is how it works in practice. A tokenized bond on a private blockchain can be sold to an investor in another country. That investor pays in digital dollars. The issuer receives digital euros. The conversion happens across a neutral settlement asset, one that isn't tied to any government or bank. That's the invisible role of XRP, not as a speculative token, but as the underlying lubricant of the new financial system. Now look at the macro picture. Interest rates are falling. Liquidity is rising. The Fed and ECB are injecting capital to keep the system afloat. But this time, those dollars and euros want to just flow through traditional markets. They'll migrate into tokenized instruments and digital corridors. It's a silent reset, not a collapse, but a migration. And the infrastructure is almost ready. RippleNet integrated with dozens of banks and payment providers. The IMF testing digital liquidity through cross-border networks. The BIS coordinating tokenized settlement pilots with central banks on every continent. Each layer builds upon the other. Private tokenization, public oversight, and neutral settlement. When they converge, we'll see the true face of the global reset, not the conspiracy version of the technological one. This isn't about erasing the dollar or creating a one-world currency. It's about connecting everything, currencies, assets, payments, and policy, through a single programmable liquidity grid. And just like the internet connected information, this network will connect value, the internet of value. The scary part? Whoever controls the liquidity controls the world. And when liquidity becomes code, control becomes absolute. Every transaction traceable, every wallet identifiable, every movement of capital programmable by policy. Unless, and this is where it gets interesting, the bridge asset itself remains neutral. That's why XRP matters. Because it's not issued by a central bank. It's not backed by debt. It's a mathematical constant in a financial system full of variables. Fast, finite, and neutral. As tokenization accelerates, the world will need that neutral core more than ever. The BIS wants to control it. The IMF wants to integrate it. Ripple wants to democratize it. And somewhere between those agendas lies the truth. The liquidity reset isn't coming. It is already here. We're just not looking in the right ledger. The money of the future won't be printed. It'll be coded. And when the final switch flips, the world will wake up inside a financial system that looks familiar, but runs on an entirely new substrate. A hidden one. Built on liquidity that never sleeps. Part 5. The activation, when the hidden ledger goes live. Every transformation in finance begins with a crisis, not the kind that destroys the system, the kind that forces it to evolve. For decades, liquidity crises have been the invisible trigger behind every policy change. In 2008, it was mortgages. In 2020, a pandemic. In 2025, it may be something far bigger, a global liquidity shortfall that no amount of printed money can fix. Picture this, a sudden shock in bond markets. Derivatives start unwinding, clearinghouses freeze. Banks can't settle cross-border positions fast enough to keep up with redemptions. And overnight, the plumbing of the financial world seizes. That's when the new system switches on. Behind the curtain, the BIS network and IMF's digital corridors have already been running simulations. Tokenized liquidity pools, cross-border FX swaps, instant settlement through a neutral bridge asset. The moment a crisis hits, that infrastructure will activate, not as an experiment, but as the solution. Publicly, they'll call it an emergency liquidity facility. Privately, it's the debut of the hidden ledger. Funds will begin to move in ways the public can't yet see. Disbursements settled across distributed networks in seconds. Digital SDRs replacing overnight loans. RippleNet corridors absorbing volume quietly as the traditional rails clog. And when markets reopen, analysts will call it a miracle. Liquidity restored. Cross-border settlements normalized. IMF digital framework prevents contagion. But the truth will be simpler. The shadow system became the real one. It won't be a press release or a law. It'll be a silent cutover, a migration from analog to digital liquidity. And once it happens, there's no going back. From that point forward, every dollar, euro, and yuan moving between nations will flow through digital corridors, each validated, traceable, programmable. The BIS will monitor settlement. The IMF will supervise reserves, and the bridge connecting it all will move invisibly through XRP-like architecture. That's the activation moment. The convergence of crisis plus technology plus necessity. You'll know it has begun when you see the headlines shift. New cross-border framework deployed to ensure stability. IMF introduces real-time digital liquidity tools. Global payment networks achieve interoperability. The world will celebrate progress, but it's really the birth of total monetary integration. For institutions, it'll mean speed and certainty. For individuals, it'll mean transparency and surveillance. Every transaction, every remittance, every asset trade, recorded forever in a system built to prevent risk, but also to control freedom. Unless the neutral bridge remains neutral. And that's where XRP stands apart. Unlike central bank-issued tokens or permissioned ledgers, XRP lives outside the hierarchy, accessible, borderless, and mathematically constrained. It can interoperate with the hidden ledger without belonging to it. In that balance lies the future, a tug-of-war between open liquidity and programmed liquidity. When the switch flips, you'll see two financial realities merge. One public, one hidden. One controlled, one free. They'll coexist, and for a while, until the market decides which version of value it trusts more. History tells us what happens next. After every crisis comes consolidation. After every consolidation comes standardization. And after standardization comes the new order. The internet of value isn't coming, it's initializing. The rate cuts, the IMF trials, the BIS projects, they're all lines of code in the same deployment. When liquidity becomes programmable, whoever controls the bridge controls the world. Maybe that's why Ripple built theirs to be open. Maybe that's why the IMF studied it in secret. And maybe that's why when the hidden ledger finally reveals itself, the world will realize XRP was never just a crypto. It was the key to the switch. The hidden ledger revealed. When the world talks about liquidity, it talks about money. But liquidity isn't money, and it's motion. It's the flow that connects every economy, every market, every life. And the system that controls that flow controls everything. And together, they've drawn the blueprint for the next era of finance. An internet of value where every asset, every transaction, every heartbeat of the global economy moves through code. But in every great transition, there's a choice. Control or freedom, opacity or transparency, compliance or connection. The hidden ledger is no longer a theory. It has the backbone of what's coming. The only question left is who will hold the keys. Because once liquidity goes digital, it never goes back. This is the hidden liquidity, XRP and the IMF Secret Ledger, the story they built in the shadows when now revealed by LTL Productions. Subscribe, and stay ready for what comes next, because the next ripple is already forming.